Thank you for tuning in and taking time from your day to participate in the first of our 2021 CDSG webinars, this one covering our newly introduced NVMe WriteBlocker and recently introduced Ditto x86 imaging device. My name is Chris Kuhl. I am the Director of Marketing at the CRU Data Security Group, or CDSG, which houses 4 product lines. We have our CRU removable storage devices for physical data security and transport, our IOSafe line of fireproof and waterproof external storage products, the latest addition to the family, our Digistore line of secure SSD storage solutions, and our WeBTech line of digital forensic investigation devices, which are featured in today's session. As those of you participating today can attest, our products are found in the hands of well-known organizations and government agencies all around the world. Before I introduce our guest, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, everyone except our presenters will be muted throughout the session. Secondly, you will have the opportunity to post questions throughout the webinar. You should be able to find a question and answer section on the right-hand portion of your streaming window. We will address as many questions as we can toward the end of the presentation. And our last housekeeping item is to let you know that we will send out a survey after the webinar, as we certainly welcome your feedback. Today, we are pleased to have Greg Dominguez talking to you all from icy and snowy West Virginia, which he calls home. Many of you know Greg personally and know his extensive background and experience in computer crime investigations in the U.S. Air Force or at Ernst & Young. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, who can certainly tell you a little more about himself before beginning today's discussion. Greg, on to you.
All right, Chris. Thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. Let's get this changed. Like Chris said, I retired from the United States Air Force in 1997 as a computer crime investigator. After retiring, I did some work in the government and then went and helped build the forensics practice at Ernst & Young. Was there for a couple of years and went to Forensic Computers, where I spent the next 15 years working on hardware for digital investigators, and that's where I got my extensive background in using WriteBlockers and testing them and all that good stuff. Currently, I'm an independent contractor working with CDSG and doing testing and marketing, and I also go to shows and talk to you guys, which I love. And I am a certified remote pilot, and I do some UAS forensics, so I'm doing all kinds of neat things, but let's get going. Some of the government agencies and ministries worldwide that use the CRU/WeBTech products, and I say CRU because some of them have the removable trays and systems they buy from different manufacturers. And here's some of the commercial outfits that use our products. Now let's get into WeBTech stuff. Of course, we try to have innovative and rugged devices because when you guys go out to do a job, you want your stuff to work. And, that's why we have them in metal cases and spend the time testing that we do. The Ditto DX, and the Ditto x86 drive imagers give you the ability to do physical images. You can create, a E01 or a DD. You can do logical imaging. You can clone, and you have the option of remote administration. And I'm going to do a live demo here in a little bit, and you'll see the remote administration live. We also have, of course, WriteBlockers, and yeah, let's get into some of them. WeBTech, where'd the name come from? It came from James Weeby. In sometime in 2000, I was at the DEA lab in Lorton, Virginia, showing them a WriteBlocker that we had gotten from Granite Digital. Actually, it was one of their standard FireWire bridges to IDE, and a gentleman named Robert Bacek had modified the firmware for us, so it was WriteBlocked. For those of you who don't know, Robert is the one who founded Tableau. Anyway, they had a WriteBlocker from WeBTech, and it was some of the first out there. James is also the creator of the mouse jiggler. WeBTech was purchased by CDSG in 2008, and James stayed on for a while, and then he left to go build his airplanes and build instruments for the experimental aircraft. But James really got us off to a good start. All right, let's talk about one of the pieces we ask you to join us for today. The NVMe WriteBlocker is the latest in our WriteBlocker devices, and it represents a vast improvement in the technology that's used inside of it, not only for connecting the drive or interfacing the drive, but taking that interface through to the host computer. The changes make it insanely fast. Excuse me. And part of that is because we left Oxford Semiconductor. We're not using their chips anymore, and we have an agreement with the chip manufacturer. We got the firmware code and the tools to make the changes ourselves, so we control everything inside that box. And this is going to be the genesis of our new improved hard drive WriteBlockers for like the Forensic Ultra Dock and the Forensic Combo Dock series. The NVMe WriteBlocker, the host connection is a USB 3.2 Gen 2, so it's 10 gigabits, and we're using the Type-C connector because they're so much easier to use than some of the older ones. And we are natively or providing you support for M.2 NVMe devices using the M.2 M-key adapter, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. You can also potentially use other U.2 devices with adapters that are not included, and we'll kind of talk about that again in a second. The connection is Oculink, and the cable you get has an Oculink connector on it. I'll show you that. And any of the adapters are commercial off-the-shelf devices, so they're fairly easy to find. Here's the WriteBlocker in a little bit more detail. On the left side, you have typical LEDs giving you some status. You've got the LCD, and there are two different modes for the LCD. One gives you the information about the WriteBlocker itself. The other one gives you information about the attached drive, and the amount of information that it can provide you is fairly significant. Then you've got the familiar buttons to scroll through that information. You've got a power switch, and then an input power LED showing you've got power, and then the output shows you that there's power here. And this is the Oculink connector, and it takes you out to the device you want to image. We have two power inputs that you should be familiar if you have the WeBTech WriteBlockers already. The standard power supply, and then the 15-pin SATA power. In case your power supply dies on you and you're out on the job, you can open up a tower or a computer and use a SATA power and the computer's power supply to get you through the image process. Here are the major components. Of course, in the kit, you get all the cables you need to connect to the host and the power supply and all that. But here's the WriteBlocker. This is the Oculink to U2 cable. Down here is the Oculink connector, the 4-pin power, and then the U2 connector, and of course the NVMe M.2 M-key adapter. And again, this is the one that's the commercial off the shelf. Some of you may already have one if you have other WriteBlockers that you're trying to use M-key devices on. This is an example of an M.2 NVMe drive. It is not included in the kit. It's here for demo purposes. This is what they look like when they're all plugged in. This is the 2280 size drive, and so you just put that little screw in to keep it down. And something that's new in the connector cables that we're using is there is a latch here so that that cable cannot pull out. So when you get ready to disassemble it, you have to depress this little tab right here. A little bit more about the adapter. This is the part number, and this is the formal name, SF8639 for this connector. It looks an awful lot like a SATA connector, but if you really look at it, it also looks a little bit like a SAS connector. But it's not going to work with SATA devices or with SAS drives. A little bit of real marketing info. The MSRP is for the kit is $549, and our introductory price is $499. And again, it's the kit, not just the WriteBlocker. We're not real sure how long this pricing is going to last, but it's not going to be too much longer probably. And like other WeBTech products, it does come with a 3-year warranty. Okay, let's get into the Ditto x86. Where did the Ditto x86 come from? We launched a number of years ago, the Ditto, and then we followed that up with a hardware refresh, and it's called the Ditto x86, or DX, excuse me, that you see here on the screen. Primarily, it's a drive imager. Again, you can create physical images just like you always have been able to. You can also do network captures, all kinds of things. But the one problem that this thing has is you can't image a drive if it's in a laptop or a tablet just by connecting this device to it. There are laptops, both PC and Mac, and tablets that can be impossible to get the drive out, or just very difficult. And a lot of times you just don't want to go through that trouble because, you know, some Apple laptops have 29 screws to get to the hard drive. So yeah, we came up with a bootable version of this product, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is the Ditto x86. The cool part about this whole product is there is no need to take a laptop or tablet or even a tower apart if you need to image it. And not only is it giving you the ability to image without taking it apart, but you're going to be using the power of that system, not the ARM processor in this guy. So your images and all are going to be a lot faster depending on the machine you're booted to. Why is it called Ditto x86? Well, it's designed to boot x86 based systems, specifically 64-bit systems. We've got two versions. The thumb drive here on the left is 64 gig, and this guy is the 2 terabyte version. They're designed to boot into the custom Ditto environment, and like the browser mode in the Dittos, if any of you have connected remotely to a Ditto or Ditto DX, it's the same browser interface. On the Ditto x86, we're calling it the kiosk mode. The neat thing is anything that's plugged into the system you boot is write blocked, period. You can change it if you're going to use an external drive, and I'm going to show you that when we get to the live demo. To change it from a read-only mode to a read-write mode, it takes 2 clicks of the mouse and you're rocking and rolling. Like the Dittos, you can create E01s, DDs, clones, you can logical image, and like the Dittos, you can also script your own XML logical imaging processes, and you can also image to and from NFS and Samba shares, as well as Windows Administrator shares, commonly referred to as $C and $D, but those have to actually be set up by the domain administrator. And again, I mentioned remote operation, but that is an option. You do not have to operate it remotely. The kiosk mode comes up on the screen of the system. The SE version, this guy, has almost 2 terabytes of storage space on here that you can control the format of and write your image to it if you want to. You could probably write images of some SD cards or small media to this guy if you wanted to, but this is only a 64 gig drive, so there's not a lot of space on there for that. And you know, for some of you, you'll be writing your images to external devices that are not these anyway. Here's a list of what the kits contain. They're pretty much identical, except the USB device comes with a lanyard so that it makes it harder to lose this little guy. We added a USB hub, and the hub has a Type-C connector on it so that if you're having to image a Mac that's only got one connector on it, it's probably going to be a Type-C, and you can plug everything into the hub to include the Type-C based power supply from Apple. And that Type-C connector on the hub is just for power pass-through. And there's a USB Type-A adapter so that if you've got to do a tablet or a PC-based product that's got Type-A connectors, you can plug it in and move on down the road. All right, this is the kiosk screen, and this is my key to move to the live demo. So bear with me a second. Going to end the show. All right. Can everybody see the screen, Chris? Okay, good. So like I said, this is the home screen of the x86. Those of you that have a Ditto or Ditto DX and have used the remote access, this will be very familiar because they're practically identical. We'll start off up here in the upper right-hand corner. This is the name of the device that I used to boot it, and this is the IP address that I happen to have for it. You'll notice that I've got 4 tabs up here. All 4 of them are different systems that are booted and are on my network. One of the things you'll have to make sure of is that you get the date and time correct, because not all systems you're going to boot to, as you well know, have the correct date and time on them. So, home screen, this is the action section, and this basically is where you tell the Ditto what you want it to do. Drop down menu, come on. You can clone a disk, and you know, a lot of people ask, why would you want to clone a disk? Well, you might want to boot up into the subject's environment and just go nosing around without booting their drive. Another example is when Microsoft was going to force people to upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10, I cloned my Windows 7 Forensic Towers drive and then let Microsoft update the clone. So physical image, logical image, clone. You can do a clone and a source as well, or a clone and an image. You can restore a physical image. So if you have made an image and you decide that you want to restore it to another drive, and because you didn't get a clone in the beginning, you can do that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about resume physical image here in just a second. You can erase the destination disk, and that includes the data partition on the Ditto x86. You can hash disk, you can do a snapshot. Snapshot will give you an HD param and smart data. And then you can do a snapshot of the network you're connected to if you're looking for a NFS share or Samba share device. That might help you out a little bit. Let's go up here and talk about logical imaging for a second. You've got your choice of 4 different outputs, just like you do on the Ditto. We've got some canned filters that you can run if you're collecting from a Windows machine. But let's say these filters don't do what you need them to do. You can click on the circle I here. Come on. Select one. There we go. We show you the XML code that's used for that filter, and then down here we tell you how to create a folder in your Ditto logs partition. I'll show you where that is in just a second. And then you can copy and paste this into your choice of code editing software. Do not use Word. That's not a code editor. It'll put more junk in there than you could ever erase, basically. And when you do that, and you hit this drop-down menu, there will be another section here. It'll either say Ditto logs and a slash and give you the name that you put in the code, or it'll say SD card as a holdover from where you put them on the Ditto and the Ditto DX. We give you the ability to choose different sources. You can choose all the partitions or just one, and you can choose the destination. And I don't have an external destination. Yes, I do, right here. This is an external drive, and I told you could do it in 2 clicks to make it read-write. 1 click, 2 clicks, and it'll process it, and it'll come up and it'll say destination USB S1 here in just a minute. There we go. Now I could use this drive if I wanted to write my image to, versus writing it to the destination data partition here. And if you were to use this destination partition to write your image to, all you need to do to get that image off is to plug it into a Windows or a Mac machine and move it over, because it isn't, it comes default, it's NTFS. Those machines would mount it. You could use a Linux system too if you wanted to. Here is the Ditto logs partition that I mentioned just a minute ago. Everything you do using the Dittos, all 3 of them, creates a log, and it lists them down here, and it starts a log off with date time sequence, and that gives you the ability to move those logs off, And you can, by default, it's an XML log. You can also enable HTML logging. A couple of our government clients have written XML parsers so that they can take that XML log and basically have their parser create a report for them. Here's where you put in your investigative info. Excuse me. This information is persistent. So when you boot another machine, you're going to have to come in here and, of course, change case number, maybe evidence number, the description, and the notes. Now, if you've got an office where there are a number of you that might be using this product, you can go to the utilities menu and you can save a configuration. It will save it to your system if you're remotely connected to it. And then when it's your turn to use it, all you have to do is load that configuration and all those settings will be back the way you had them the last time. An example that is being used real world, we've got a client on the West Coast that's a big security firm, and their IT department has a number of dittos. When an employee becomes an ex-employee, depending on the employee's status, they automatically image their computer system as a preservation method. And based on where that employee is on the chain, they will write that image out to a different location on their network. So they have different configurations that they load based on the employee status. If you want to edit this stuff, just do it right here. Make your changes and click OK. I'll just click cancel. If you don't click OK, it's not going to take. And I'm going to show you another place where clicking a button when you finish is critically important as well. This is a system overview. So the model is Ditto x86, and this is the device ID of that and here's the license indicator and refresh button. If this area on either side of the license is white like it is here, that means your license is good to go. It can change to several different colors, and it changes to like a yellow color if your license is getting near expiration. It'll change to red if it is expired or if it can't get the information. And if you need to refresh your license, you can just hit these two little green arrows and it will go out, pull the information down from the server, and you'll be good to go. Here is the motherboard serial number, or not serial number, but model number. And then here's the serial number. And we have some DMI info that gives you a lot more information about the system that is your target box. A lot more information than you might be able to get just from the outside of the machine. These are all of the devices that are connected. These two happen to be internal to that M47. These guys are part of the Ditto x86. This is the data partition. I haven't written anything to it. This is just all a result of formatting it. I'll do that again to show you how you preview. Any device that's connected, you can do this on the partition that's got a format to it. So here's where the logs are. If you needed to connect to a Samba share or an NFS share, to image from, and that would only be a logical image coming across the network. You use this button, and if you want to write it out to a destination location, you've got to set it up here. And again, this is the system logs. I want to go back up here and go to configure. Here is some of that same information that you saw earlier. And then this is where you can set some defaults, you know, how you want it to do the hashing, what you want your default format to be if you actually erase a drive and have it set to format that drive. One thing that I would suggest you consider is HTML logging. By default, it is disabled, and enable it. It'll create the XML log, and then it will also create a HTML log that's a lot easier to read than trying to scroll through all the formatting and stuff in the XML page. If you change anything in any of these tabs, you have to click the commit changes button down here to have them take. Otherwise, you'll get back to the home screen and like, wow, it didn't change. Is something wrong? No, it only takes once or twice and you'll remember. The network interface that I'm plugged into with this machine is the machine's Ethernet port. The hub that we provide in the kit has an Ethernet port so that if the machine that you're connected to does not have an Ethernet port, you can still get it on the network and manage it. You can also have like you can with the Ditto and the Ditto DX, you can also have it be a DHCP server for your network if you're doing a large scale acquisition. And I want to show you what I've got on my network just to show you how easy it is to manage multiple machines. Here is a Lenovo T430. It's back here in the corner. This is a 27-inch iMac, and you notice the IP address has changed. I'm connected to this guy on a different network. And I did this to represent the fact that if you have credentials to the network that somebody boots this on, you can log into it from around the world. Why would you do that? Well, it's a lot cheaper to send one of these things via FedEx to, let's say, Japan, and have a trusted person in the office in Japan actually connect it, give you the IP address, and then you log in, you do what you need to do, and then they can disconnect it. And you haven't had to put a body on an airplane and have them go through quarantine and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot more cost efficient to do it like that if you needed to. And then here is a 2012 Mac. You know, it's incredibly easy to manage all these. And another advantage is most of you know that when you're on a large scale or even a small scale acquisition, whether you're law enforcement or corporate security, there's a lot of paperwork to be done when you're collecting evidence. Well, if you've got one person managing all of the images once they get connected, the examiners or agents that are there that actually did the connections and are helping seize the stuff can actually be doing the paperwork, concentrating on that while the image is running, and not having to worry about managing the fact that the image is running or it's finished, that kind of thing. You can create accounts just like you can on the Dittos. I'm I don't see as much of a need for it here unless you're going to be shipping it to some foreign location and not having one of your employees or agents go. You could reduce what the local people could actually do. Here's a list of all the logs. And then again, utilities, set the date and time. Those of you that have Dittos, you'll notice that we added a power off switch here, just so that if you're have ever been bitten by just powering off a machine improperly and it messed up the OS, you understand why we want to gracefully power this stuff off. I haven't had any issues just pulling the plug, but you never know. You can set the date and time. If you're remotely connected, the date and time gives you a synchronize button, and it will synchronize to the machine that you are connected remotely with. If you aren't connected and you just boot the computer up and you're on the computer's screen, you will not get this. You'll have to manually enter this if you need to change anything. Updates. When an update is issued, you can download it from our website and to your machine, connect remotely, and this upload button will allow you to navigate to the location on your machine, put it in here, firmware upgrade, and it does it. You can download it, copy it to a thumb drive, and anytime you plug a thumb drive into, or a USB device into any of the Dittos, the Ditto looks to see if there are any bin files on that drive that have our signature. If it does, this one will pop up a window and ask you if you want to do the update based on the dated bin file that it found. Very easy to update. There's several other methods to update. They're in the manual. You have that versatility. All right, I think that pretty much covers the overview or the demo. Let me get the presentation back up. Okay. We're going to talk about image speeds for a minute. And I'm going to show you some actual numbers that I've collected. I'm not showing you these, guaranteeing you that you will see these exact numbers. I have been very reluctant in the last 18 years to publish speed numbers of images that WriteBlockers and such can collect, because like everything, every piece in the chain has an effect on that speed. Excuse me. But I can tell you that the NVMe WriteBlocker is not going to be your bottleneck. That thing is fast. It's crazy fast. And it's a lot faster than Windows and Mac systems will let it go. I have seen speeds on my old Windows 10 Dell in the 25 gig a minute range. That's not too shabby, especially when we started out, we were tickled to death when we could get 2 gig a minute. I move up to a little bit more modern machine, and this Mac that I'm actually doing the presentation on is a 2017 MacBook Pro, and it's got multiple USB-C connectors on it. So I did physical images, I did DDs and E01s, and I was seeing these kinds of speeds, 49 to 50 gig a minute. Now, to be fair, I was actually using an external USB-C drive that had an NVMe device in it. So there was no lag in the imaging speeds. I'm telling you these numbers to back up my statement up here. And then I'm going to, in a minute, we'll see some actual screen captures of the Ditto x86 screens and some live numbers that I captured. And again, I'm going to say it again, everything in the imaging chain has a bearing on the speed. All right, I'm going to continue the caveat for a second. These are real world tests I'm going to show you the screen captures of. They are the types of imaging that you as the user might do. It's not stuff that's engineered to make it look fast or anything like that. It's real world stuff. Then again, it's going to depend on device you're imaging, the system you're using to image, where you're writing the image, you know, the quality of the system. You know, is it USB 3? Is it USB 2? Is it USB 3.1? Is it USB 3.2? Anyway, I beat that enough, I think. In the next few slides, you're going to see some screen captures with the speeds, and I'll tell you exactly how I got those. Okay, this first slide is from the Samsung T5 that we used in our beta test program. And I show you that because we thought these speeds were pretty good. And this is the Ditto x86. I was imaging a MacBook Pro, the 2012 version. And, you know, it finished up, and I'm showing you the finished speeds because the speeds start out quite a bit faster than that. And over the image process, they slow down just a little bit. This is at finish, so just under 19 gig a minute. That's not too shabby. This is that same MacBook Pro, but using the production Ditto x86 SE, the 2 terabyte version. And this is the imaging speed at the 29-second mark of completion. It's within 29 seconds of being finished. So 25.23 gig or 420 megabytes per second. Being able to image a 256 gig drive in under 6 minutes is pretty reasonable, I think. So I booted this Mac 2017 using USB-C, excuse me, and I wanted to show the insane speed that it started out at. Actually, it was a little bit faster than this, but I wasn't fast enough with the screen capture on the other machine. Now, that same image process ended up at 34 gig a minute. So this 1 terabyte drive was imaged in about 25 minutes. So 1 terabyte APFS 5.2 drive was physically imaged in about 25, 26 minutes. I hope that gets your attention. To help demonstrate that the NVMe WriteBlocker will not be your bottleneck, I connected it to the Ditto x86 with a 2015 vintage Samsung 950 Pro NVMe drive and imaged it, and it finished at 38 gig a minute. Using the NVMe WriteBlocker in Windows 10 on the 2015 Dell M4700 with USB 3 and FTK Imager, I'm seeing 248 to 360 megabytes per second, depending on where I'm writing the image and all that. That's still incredibly fast, and that machine is limited because it's a USB 3, and you know the drive itself was old. Had I used a modern machine and a much newer, let's say a Sabrent Rocket Pro at NVMe, it would have been a little bit faster. But anyway, these speeds, again, are speeds that you can attain. I've shown you how I got those, and one of the common complaints over the years at forensic shows is, well, yeah, company so-and-so says that their product will do that speed, but they don't tell you how. They don't demonstrate it. And you're probably wondering, how are we seeing those crazy speeds? We're seeing those crazy speeds because the firmware in the Ditto x86 has been IO optimized. There's threading going on, all kinds of neat little things that make it so much faster. If you have questions after the webinar is over and all that, you can contact me at forensics@weebtech.com. There are two of us that get this email. One is on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, and we'll be happy to answer any questions or talk through it if it's not an easy answer. Chris?
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining, and I'm glad your power held out during your ice storm out there. So we've had a question come in. Again, a reminder for folks, there is the ability to enter a question in the chat window on the right side of your screen. But one question that came in earlier is somebody's wondering whether we have plans to add support for the AFF4 image format. So if you'd like to speak to that.
Sure, absolutely. It is on the list. Hopefully it'll get done this year. There's a few things above it in priority, but I've been advocating for that because there are an awful lot of e-discovery tools like Evimentary and others that are using AFF4 as their file format. It's not a trivial process, but it's been investigated, and yes, it can be done and is on the schedule to be done.
Great, great. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything else come in. So again, thank you all for your time. And again, thanks to Greg for joining us and presenting the material here. He's, as he said, always accessible. So please hit him up if you've got anything else you'd like to know about these tools or any of our other devices. So once again, thanks for your time all, and be well.